Hey, this is QAShahin, and today we're going to look at how to work with request parameters. In this video, we're going to look at two things. First of all, we're going to look at how to work with an API that expects a request parameter and returns an object, and then we're going to write a REST assured test for that endpoint in which we will assert on the object that is returned. So in this video, we're going to jump straight into it. So the first thing we're going to do is open our controller. And if we just quickly look at this endpoint that we've written. So this was a get endpoint that is called hi and expects a path variable of name, and it returns a string. Typically, endpoints return an object. So if you were to hit an endpoint using something like curl or maybe postman, you'd actually get something that resembles an array, like a structure of data where there's some kind of key value pairing going on. And we haven't done anything really like that. So in this video, we're going to create an endpoint that returns an object, i.e. an array of data. And then we're going to go and write a test for that. So we're going to create a new one, and we're going to keep this existing endpoint in here. So this new method is going to look very similar to the method we already have. We're going to create a request method annotation, and for this one we're going to say something like /hello, and the method itself, let's create a public method, and this is going to return an object. So let's create an object. So we're just going to say it's going to return a person. Now for the moment, person doesn't exist. We'll create a person in a moment, and let's give this method name getPerson. And this is going to expect a parameter of type request parameter. So request param, and the value of this request parameter is going to be name, and the object type that we're going to pass in is going to be a string, and this is going to be called name as well. So what is happening here? So similar to here, where we said in the previous video that this is going to be a path variable, i.e. a variable that exists on the path itself. This is going to be a request parameter, i.e. it's going to be a request parameter that's going to be passed into this object here. So because we're expecting to return an object, let's go ahead and return that object. So we're just going to say return new, let's say person, and for the moment person doesn't exist, and let's just say person will accept a name. So ultimately what this will now do is this will return a person object, and in order to instantiate that person object, we're going to pass in a variable of type string called name, and this is how Spring maps the object that we pass in to the object we're going to instantiate. So now let's go ahead and create a person object. So I'm going to right click on our package, new Java, and I'm just going to call this person. So this is going to be a very simple Pojo-like object. We're going to have a string name, and we're going to have an empty constructor, and we're also going to have a constructor that would expect the name. So this should all be familiar. And in here we're going to create two methods, a getter and a setter. So let's create the setter first. So public void set name, and here we're going to pass in the name, and we're just going to say this dot name is equal to name, and let's create a getter as well. So public string get name, and we're just going to say return this dot name. So I'm assuming that you're familiar with this, but I'm going to quickly go through this. So this is a simple Java class where it has a single member variable called name of type string, two constructors, one that's empty and one that expects a string to be passed in of type string with a value of name. So this is where it's going to populate the value of name, and then two methods, one to set the name and one to get the name. The reason why we do this, the reason why we create these getters and setters is because on the controller, and notice how the red lines have now been removed because it now recognizes person as an object that exists. So going back to point, the reason why we set these getters and setters is because Spring in the background automatically is able to set and get the name when we call for it. So when we say return new person which expects a name, it will return an array that will be a makeup of effectively everything that's in the constructor for now anyway. So that's it. So now let's run our application and quickly test to see if the endpoint is actually working. So application is now up and running. I'm just going to go in the terminal and I'm going to do a quick curl to it. So I'm going to do curl http localhost port 8080/hello. And now I'm going to pass in a request parameter. So this looks very similar to the way we did it previously. I'm going to just say I'm going to say name equals QAShahin. And now if you have a look, for our previous endpoint, it returned hi plus and then the value of name. But this time it's returning an array. This is an object that's being returned. And the object is saying that it's found something called name and it has a value of QAShahin. So this is now proving that we're able to hit this new endpoint and pass in a request parameter as part of this curl anyway that returns a new person, which on the returned object type of this endpoint is a person. So this object is of type person and these are the contents of that object type. So now let's go ahead and actually write a test for this. So to do that, I'm just going to open up our existing test. And in here, I am going to create a new test. And let's give this a sensible name. So public void should get person name. And in here, what we want to do is a few things. So first of all, what we want to do is write a test that passes in a parameter, and previously where we asserted on the string that's returned, this time we're going to assert on the object that is returned. So what do we want to do? The first thing we're going to do is actually define the name that we're going to pass in the value. So similar to before, we're just going to say string name, and let's give this name QAShahin. And again, similar to before, we're just going to say given, and this time we want to use the param value. So the param that we want to pass in is going to be called name, because in our controller, that is what we called it, name. And the value of this name is going to be the string that we created here. So I'm just going to say name. And then I'm going to say when, and let's do get here as well. And the value of this was hello. Then we are going to assert on the body, and this time I'm going to make the test fail on purpose. I'm just going to put in an is empty just to show you what it looks like. So let's run this test, or let's run the test class and see what happens. Okay, good. So our previous test has passed, and that's a good thing. That means our API, the way it used to behave prior to us adding this new endpoint, still behaves the way it did. So that's a good thing. But this new test that we've written failed. And the reason it failed is this. In our new test, we're just expecting some string to be returned that has a value of nothing, which is not true. because what the endpoint is actually returning is this. So this is the object that is returned. If we compare it to our terminal did the same thing. It returned an object. So now somehow we need to assert on the object. And how do we do that? Well, actually, it's actually pretty straightforward. Body is an overloaded method. It takes in a number of different parameters, and one it takes in is the key that you are looking for in your object that's written and the value that it contains. So in this instance, the key, if you have a look here, inside this particular object is name, and the value that it has is QAShahin. So the key is name, and we expect the value to be, if you've guessed it, to be the value of name. So now what should happen is when it hits this endpoint and it passes in this request variable, which has the value of name, i.e. QAShahin, then the endpoint return an object that contains a key called name, which has the value of QAShahin. So let's run this test one more time and it should pass. And there you go, both tests passed. So what have we done in this video? So in this video, we have created a light endpoint that returns an object. And in order to utilize this endpoint, we need to pass in a request parameter. In our test, we are passing in a request parameter. And this time, we are asserting on an object that is returned. And that's it for this video, folks. You will be able to find all the code shown in this video on my blog site. The link to the blog can be found in the description of this video below. Make sure to subscribe, share my videos, and leave a comment before moving on to the next one. I try my best to explain my videos in as basic way as I can, while making sure it's not too basic that it slows you down too much. Many thanks for watching, and I shall see you in the next one.